And we are live. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Stochastic Fantasy Football channel. My name is Matt Savoca, and I am here, as I am usually with on Tuesday mornings, Nick Lepri, Notorious Fantasy. He took a Tuesday off last week, but he's back. We're talking quarterbacks, and we are, of course, talking all your waiver wire questions. As someone said in the chat already, Week 4 was rough. Week 4 was rough, not necessarily because your fantasy teams had horrible scores. A lot of the stud players did just fine. It was the injuries, right? And it started rough with your Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa, and that situation's still ongoing. He's out indefinitely, and it only got worse from there. Javonte Williams, done for the year. Jonathan Taylor, probably done for the short week. Cordero Patterson, who was playing great on IR. Give us a sense of your week 4. And also, I should add, good morning, Nick. How are you? Happy Tuesday.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Matt. I'm doing pretty well this morning, I guess. Technically not, but yeah, I'm doing good now. Sitting here, chilling out. But yeah, the injuries were the worst this week. I actually had a good DFS week because I ate the chalk like how Jameis eats those W's, and it ended up working out very well. But besides that, man, half my fantasy team is in a casket right now. You hate to see it, honestly. It's week 5, and it doesn't feel like it's week 5. Like, it feels like the season just started, and we're already in week 5, dealing with all these injuries. I hope all y'all's fantasy teams are safe. You didn't have to get destroyed by a bunch of injuries, because I've seen screenshots where people have, like, Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, and Tua on the same team, and it's like, that's just awful.
It's so rough. And to be honest, I was a little worried about something like this happening, Nick, not because you can predict these things, but because we didn't have any
Yeah.
significant injuries in the preseason. And I was like, oh gosh, there's some sort of landmine week happening. And hey, you still go for the talent profile of a player like Javonte Williams with an improvement at the quarterback position. The process we yell as we drop Javonte Williams from our season-long rosters. I will give you a little bit of a shout out because you are 4-0 in the Stochastic C League. That's the relegation league that we play in over at stochastic.com. I happen to be 3-1 and number 1 in points scored. Did you have Javonte on that team? No, you have Melvin Gordon on that squad, right?
I have Melvin Gordon. Yeah, I have Melvin Gordon on basically every team.
So again, Melvin Gordon was a player that you were talking about constantly about benefiting from uncertainty, not knowing how much we got out of Javonte Williams. At this point, we still don't know how much Melvin Gordon is going to benefit from that uncertainty because Latavius Murray gets signed off the practice squad of the Saints. He played in that game in London, but now he's going to be a Denver Bronco. We're going to get into that in a minute because Jeffrey Foote is going to have us talking defenses here on Tuesday because we thank him very much for the first super chat of week 5. Jeffrey, thank you very much. Really appreciate you and everyone else hanging out this morning. Chiefs D. And in case you're just getting rolled over from week 4 to week 5, Chiefs are playing the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday night, or the Titans D on the road, 2.5-point favorites against the Washington football team in an extremely low 42-point total game.
Yeah, for
Washington
me,
Commanders, I guess.
yeah, it's gonna have to be the Titans, definitely. I mean, the Titans they looked pretty good defensively, and they really turned it around after the first 2 weeks. Like, they looked like a legitimate dumpster fire. Like, they were gonna be awful for the rest of the season after the first 2 games, but they turned it around. I definitely would pick the Titans defense here. Any defense playing the Commanders at this point seems ideal.
Trying to look at some of the expert consensus rankings as we start off the week here. I kind of understand the Chiefs defense pick. I mean, they looked pretty solid against the Buccaneers team that had all of their weapons, although apparently Julio Jones, broken record, nicked up once again. I'm going to lean slightly with the Titans, but if you're looking for turnover, like let's say you're an underdog heading into the afternoon or the evening, I could see why you won't go with the Chiefs because they could absolutely turn over Derek Carr and that offense that is sputtering a little bit. I guess they've had a few good weeks. They've been more up and down than I thought, is what I'll say about Las Vegas.
Yeah, but eventually I feel like things are going to click. And if it was ever going to click, it would be in a division matchup like this. Like last week up against Denver, they looked better. So I just feel like maybe they'll just have a bigger game this week. I don't think the Chiefs are necessarily a bad start either. I just feel like anytime you can stream your defense against Carson Wentz, you might want to do that.
I think that's fair to say. Roderick, you started off the chat this morning. I'm sorry to hear that you have Jonathan Taylor and Javonte. I think Taylor's going to be back. I actually think it's smart for his long-term outlook. I mean, rest of season, to sit him on this short week because they play Denver on Thursday.
Definitely.
But Javonte's tough. You're set up for success here. I don't really think you need to make any sort of drastic moves with Hines, Melvin Gordon, and Algier. Is that how you say it? Algier?
Tyler Algier, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. I've heard it like 3 different ways. By a hair, I'm leaning Algier just because of the way that the Falcons have been able to run the ball.
Yeah. And Algier seems like he has like actual upside for like multiple weeks, whereas like Naheem Hines, what are you going to play him this week and then never again, right? They're going to use Philip Lindsay. I think Naheem Hines can get it done on a 1-week sample size up on Thursday Night Football against Denver, but I don't think he's even like he doesn't have really any value with Jonathan Taylor. So I probably would look for Algier. I really think Algier is a decent player. His matchups are just extremely tough.
They're tough. I like the fact that Atlanta's been rushing the ball. Well, they actually look like they have figured it out on the offensive line, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I will say one thing: Caleb Huntley out touched Algier at the goal line 3-0. In terms of routes run, it was no contest. Algier has that part of the rushing backfield locked up. All right, we're talking about quarterbacks today. We're turning over the leaf from week 4 to week 5. It is officially the second quarter of the fantasy football regular season. That means if you got trade questions, definitely hit us up in the chat. We see some of our favorites in here. Just Bob, what's up, man? I know you hit the like button on the way in. I hope you guys did too. We got a couple dozen hanging out this fine Tuesday morning, this rainy Tuesday morning, if you're in my part of the United States. Interesting week for sure. Behind us, and then upcoming, I see some really interesting spots I want to get to, like Tampa Bay in a get right spot, 8-point favorites at home against the Atlanta Falcons. Your Dolphins starting Teddy Bridgewater against the New York Jets team. We got Kenny Pickett officially named the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they're 14.5-point underdogs on the road in Buffalo. That's going to be a fun first NFL start. And what do we have? Saquon Barkley playing quarterback. It was a weird week. Let's turn the tide over. Let's turn the page. Let's get into those tier 1 quarterbacks. Are you ready to roll the graphics onto the screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna put them up in like 2 seconds. But something I just want to talk about real quick. It's so funny the way people treat Pickett compared to Trubisky. Like, did Pickett really look that good? Like, it's like, oh, he threw an interception. It's okay. He's a rookie. And then Trubisky does something similar, and they're like, oh, this asshole. What a garbage quarterback. It's very funny. I always found that to be extremely funny.
It's a very results-oriented league, right? And so you can't really argue with what you just said. He threw, 3 interceptions?
Yeah.
In just the second half. I think the aggressiveness is what we were looking for. The fact that George Pickens immediately popped when Pickett got into the game. That kind of stuff, when you talk about the ever elusive spark that Mike Tomlin and many coaches before him have talked about, it just seemed like that did occur there. Just Bob says, I was without St. Brown, Keenan, and Kamara. All right, well, you're going to have a significantly better week 5 because I think all 3 of them should play this week. That's going to be better. Alex White, what's up, man? Good to see you again. Jonathan Taylor out this week, so I'm going to have to run Singletary as my backup. Yep, that's what I'm doing in many a league. Unless you think you should run Khalil Herbert. I like Khalil Herbert to play, but you're not starting him over Singletary right now, even with David Montgomery sort of meh to play this week.
Okay. I think I'd still play Herbert, assuming David Montgomery doesn't play. I mean, even as 14-point favorites, how much do you think Buffalo's going to run? They just don't run. Really? Okay. And
Singletary's got some receiving work. I could see it in like a standard league where it's much closer, but in half PPR or full PPR, it's not particularly close, especially when you consider touchdown upside. Alex, I would go with Singletary. I've been higher on Singletary all season long. I'm ready for the 9 to 12 points I get every single week from him. Because you're right, they want to pass all the time in Buffalo. But I would say Singletary should be on the field much more often because they lost a ton of slot weaponry this week. Jameson Crowder on IR, broke his
Yeah.
ankle. Isaiah McKenzie, concussion protocol, looked pretty serious. Probably misses this week if I had to guess. Singletary should see the field plenty for an offense that, again, is favored by 14.5 points. That's a lot of points. You ready for these graphics, man?
Yeah, they're on. I just have to click something, but yeah. Something funny as well. I just wanted to note really quick is like speaking of like 9 to 12 points. Shout out to Rashad Penny for finally showing up.
That game was wild, and you brought up the DFS side of things already. Check us out, the Big Brother channel, the one that started it all, the Stochastic DFS channel. Uh, just hit 80,000 subscribers over there, but I was looking at the Millie Maker lineup, and I think it was the biggest single game stack to take down the Millie Maker
Crazy.
in a couple of years. And it's a really cool thing. We talk about game environment, especially over there, but we talk about it here where what happens in the game from a talent or production standpoint that tips the scales, and suddenly everyone is outproducing their expectations. That certainly occurred. Penny looked great. Hawkinson looked great. And even without Jamal Williams, of course, goes off on the other side too. And suddenly the classic shootout is on our hands in an unexpected place. Tier 1, you shouldn't be surprised. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, attempting to break fantasy football at this point. And then we just completely take Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes as passers, rushers, and play extenders for granted at this point. They are superheroes. As we saw it like 10 times Sunday night. If you got them, you're starting them. What isn't there to say about tier 1?
Literally nothing. These guys are fucking amazing. Lamar Jackson. The one thing about the Ravens are they just choke. Like they're just choke artists right now. Like against Miami, you're up by roughly 7 zillion points. You choke up against Buffalo. I mean, look, I'm not someone who blames the refs. I am when the Dolphins are playing, but like in a normal game, I don't really care. But it seems like the refs kind of did the Ravens a little dirty in that game. But at the end of the day, like you have to close the game out. Marcus Peters is like yelling at someone on the sideline. Like it's just a bad look. But now he's getting the Cincinnati Bengals. Anyone could win that game. But I do think like he's gonna play really well in that game.
I do too. I think it was his lowest offensive grade, Lamar Jackson's, of the season. A crucial turnover when they were aggressive in the red zone. That sucked. The superstar last week for the Ravens, my goodness, J.K. Dobbins looked good. We'll get there tomorrow. It's not like we're changing our outlook rest of season for Lamar Jackson. No, not at all. I am not concerned. Baltimore has a interesting matchup against a Cincinnati defense that has actually impressed me. I was looking at some advanced stats. In terms of ability to stop teams from getting a first down or touchdown, basically get a stop. The Cincinnati Bengals are number 1 in the NFL so far this year. Really strong defense. Still a 48-point total in that game. You're starting Lamar.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think Tua was looking decent in that game before he got whacked. But yeah, the defense did get a crucial pick on him early on. So I don't know. I think the Cincinnati defense is pretty decent. And out of the 4 defenses that they're playing against, Josh Allen gets Pittsburgh, Hurts against Arizona, Lamar against Cincy, and Pat Mahomes against the Raiders. I think the Bengals defense scares me the most by far out of that group.
How the Pittsburgh defense has fallen in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing offenses this year. Pittsburgh 18th, below average. No longer an elite defense. I think we hit tier 2 where things get a little bit more interesting. Of course, Russell Wilson, I see you there at the bottom of tier 2. Thank you for showing up. Finally going off. Tom Brady looked a little dinged up after that game. His weaponry continues to get healthier and healthier, with the possible exception of Julio Jones. And then these other quarterbacks, I mean, with the exception of Herbert, who could sneak his way into tier 1, you can make an argument for him. I don't think you have anybody better on your roster, but all of these players, unfortunately, have a little bit of risk of ruin, even Joe Burrow in that same game environment against the Ravens.
Yeah, the one guy that I'd want to point out right now is, despite him being good in fantasy, top 10 quarterback in 3 out of 4 weeks, Kyler Murray, like, what is wrong with the Arizona Cardinals? Like, can someone tell me why they're this bad. Like against Cliff Kingsbury versus Matt Rule, Cliff Kingsbury should be running circles around this guy because the guy can't really move because he's a bigger fella, Matt Rule. But at the end of the day, Kyler Murray should have had a huge game there, and he just doesn't. Like I genuinely don't understand like what's happening in Arizona. Like that meme. I don't know what the name of that guy is that's on ESPN. It's like what's happening in Utah, what's happening in Arizona. That's the real question here because this team should be blowing teams out, and they're just not doing anything. Like you're so used to the Arizona Cardinals, like weeks 1 through 8 before Call of Duty drops, where the team's just on fire. Then after that, normally everything implodes. But right now is normally the hot streak for Arizona. Maybe D-Hop coming back really helps out Kyler Murray. But it just hasn't looked the best. And I like the game environment against the Eagles. But he's a guy I wanted to point out because it's confusing that he doesn't do better.
So you look at some of the stats from last week and you're like, okay, like he's throwing a lot, at least. He threw 58 times in week 3. But you're right. Like you're only putting up 26 points against, I guess, a slightly better than expected Carolina defense. I'm not impressed overall with Kyler Murray either. That said, the rushing upside, you got to go there. What do you think of Kirk Cousins all the way at 10? That seems a little bit bullish. I'm just trying to see what his game. I guess he's playing Chicago. They're 7-point favorites at home. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, he's been a top 12 quarterback twice. It seems like it's every other week, so this would be the week. He was QB 21 last week against New Orleans in England. That game was not the best. Any of those England games, it's really hard to kind of figure out what's going to actually happen because to me, those games are always end up just being extremely weird. But now he's back at home against Chicago. The Bears defense is I mean, like, look, they look decent against the Giants, but then again, the Giants didn't have Daniel Jones for a lot of the game.
Or Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, so it's like Saquon was quarterback, like you said earlier. So I think Kirk Cousins has a good game. He has a lot of weapons around him. Obviously, he has like virtually zero rushing upside, but you don't necessarily need rushing upside to have a top 5-10 game. And I think up against the Bears, he would get it done.
He better. I think that pretty much sums it up. Justin Herbert also just low-key awesome, playing a Cleveland defense who is low-key pretty bad. Right now in Football Outsiders defensive DVOA. Oh, this is offense. I was like, that is not right. Right now, Cleveland, inside the bottom 3, 30th. Next to Detroit and Seattle, who just created a shootout for the ages. Let's answer a question here. Ron the GOAT. What's up, man, Ron? I have Hurts, CMC, Brees, Christian Kirk, Sutton, Kelsey. Good start. J-Rob, Gabe Davis, Tyler Bass, and the 49ers D. Okay, so here's your whole team. Sitting at 3-1. Should you make trades? Look, I think you're probably sitting pretty at this point. Keenan Allen as a player, I think you're going to get more production out of like this week. If you wanted to make a move and try to package 2 of David Montgomery, Mike Williams, Khalil Herbert, I think that makes sense. And probably in a 1 quarterback league, I am moving Kyler at this point. I will say that.
Yeah, I agree. That's really the only thing I would do is just move either Kyler or Hurts. I'd rather have Hurts the rest of the season, so I would rather move Kyler, the midget guy himself. But I do think that you could get some value for Hurts. The problem with 1 quarterback leagues is that no one really values the quarterback, in my opinion, at least in the leagues I play in. So it's going to be hard to move him for something that's super valuable, but it really just depends on your league, right? If you're in a league with people that might be like drastically in need of quarterback, then maybe.
I think that is a situation you might be able to take advantage of this week, Ron. Like reach out to the Tua manager, reach out to someone who lost Trey Lance 2 weeks ago. Kyler. I mean, I'm sitting there going, okay, Kyler's been underperforming. His average depth of target's been really low. He's got Hopkins coming back. If I was a Trey Lance manager, I would be hitting up the Kyler Murray manager, see if I can make something happen. And especially with the depth you have at running back, you could probably make a deal go through if I had to guess. Let's hit up tier 3. I think this one's really interesting because I want to talk about someone who better be there. Remember, we use, yes, good. He's there. Phew. We use expert consensus rankings on Tuesday. Not only does it help you get a sense of what your opponents might do on the waiver wire as you're getting ready either tonight or tomorrow, but it also gives us a chance to turn over our models because, again, San Francisco and LA just played a few hours ago, it seems. And so our first run of stochastic projections for the following week happened Tuesday night. Tomorrow morning, tune in at 10 a.m. Eastern for the running back stream. We will switch it over, as we always do, to the stochastic rankings and projections. By the way, guys, we just got awesome tools over there. I just saw that our start sit tool is live over on the Stochastic Fantasy Football page. It uses the same projections that power our DFS tools that help people win literally millions of dollars every single week. And you can plug in your scoring platform as well. All your 1v1 or 2v2 decisions, super, super easy. Just head over to stochastic.com/fantasy-football and you'll see it on the left-hand side of the screen. Here you go. 12, 13, 14. Aaron Rodgers, meh. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to have much better days, especially against the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
And then Jared Goff. I mean,
Goat.
QB1. QB1, bro.
Yeah. I mean, the man scored like 30 million points last week.
With the help of TJ Hawkinson. This might be my favorite part of the quarterback tier this season. Obviously, you want Lamar, you want Jalen Hurts, but if you don't have one of these, one of those top tier, I think one of these three is where you actually feel the most comfortable, because you probably can't, maybe Ron, I hope it's different in your league, but maybe you can't get all the trade value you feel like you deserve for those in-between players, those 5 through 11 players. But I'm not starting anybody else. I'm not actively looking for a quarterback if I'm starting Rodgers, Lawrence, or Goff right now. You feel the same way?
Yeah, I understand Lawrence had a bad game last week, but that was just a bad matchup. I think he played good. The fantasy score just doesn't say that, right? He was QB 30, but I think he had a good game, all things said and done, right? Against an Eagles defense that's really tough. I
Really
think Trevor
tough.
Lawrence bounces back against Houston. Like, the Houston's defense is soft as baby shit, so I really expect Trevor Lawrence to have a really big game. Same thing goes with Jared Goff. I feel more comfortable with Lawrence and Goff than I would with Rodgers. Now, Rodgers does play the Giants, but the Giants defense doesn't look bad. And this is also one of those not Houston games. This is one of those games in London. And those games always just some crazy shit, like the double doink. Like, you're going to see some crazy stuff happen there. Players might just be tired. Like, I don't necessarily get why it's like that, but it always gets fucked up when they go there, or when they go to like Mexico City to play a game. Like, it always gets messed up. Like last year, they didn't even play because the field was so fucked up.
I
You
forgot
know,
about that.
that crazy things are going to happen when they go, and then they're going to Germany at some point this year. So just in reality, I think I need to just continue to kind of bang the drum for, don't be overexcited for those games, because they typically never go super high scoring. Obviously, the Saints Vikings game wasn't the worst, but I don't really expect Rodgers versus the Giants to go crazy.
Whoever that is, Rodgers versus Saquon?
Yeah.
Question mark? Yeah, let's move on to tier
Tyrod.
4. But I agree. Actually, now I want to do a little data study and see what those London and overseas games in general tend to do compared to the total. All right. New
Yeah.
data
I mean,
project for me. That sounds exciting.
on part of my take, the Barstool podcast, they call it the Lunder, where you bet the under in London.
The London under. I didn't know it was a thing.
The Lunder. Yeah,
There
a
we
lot
go.
of people do it.
As we hit tier 4, just want to give a shout out. You see them at the top of the screen. And maybe if you've been here before, you take that little part of the banner on the YouTube screen for granted. You shouldn't. Underdog Fantasy is freaking awesome, man. It's an awesome platform. We're very thankful for them to sponsor us. And they give you free money when you sign up over there. That's the big part that we want to take advantage of. Promo code Stochastic, STOKASTIC, gives you a first match deposit bonus up to $100. Best Ball is a great way to hone your skills in fantasy football, get to know the player pool. And if your summer best ball teams or your season-long teams are struggling so far this season, we're going to help you out. But get into the action over there. Get into the Best Ball Resurrection Tournament. Starts week 6, goes to week 17. A $10 entry can net you up to $100K, and you can get $100 or up to $100 free when you make your first deposit using promo code Stochastic. All right, here we got the warts on the profile page. I like to start at the bottom up sometimes. Dak Prescott at 22. Excited to see him on the list possibly. I've seen him as low as 27, 28. Those are the people who aren't really raking him. But if he plays, I probably have him closer to 15, 16. Stafford, I just had to roll your eyes a couple times last night because he got smoked by one of the best defenses in the league. And then another group of overperformers in this bunch. Wentz, not so much over the last 3 weeks, but Smith, Tannehill finally, Mariota, and Brissett. And throw Jimmy G in there. They all overperformed over the last 2 weeks compared to expectations.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Stafford over half an interception at this point is free money. It's hit 3 out of the last 4 games. Quarterback 29, 10, 27, 29. Like I'm not saying to bench Matt or like drop Matthew Stafford, but I don't feel comfortable playing him if I'm being honest with you. Like against Dallas, like, oh, maybe this will be a high scoring game, but Dallas's defense is legit. Like, I don't see Matthew Stafford having that big of a game. Like, Matthew Stafford's good enough so that Cooper Kupp can do good. He's good enough so that if Al Robinson wasn't a ghost, maybe Al Robinson could do good. But Al Robinson isn't good. Cooper Kupp is good, so you can start Cooper Kupp. But besides that, this Rams team is disaster. Super Bowl hangover to the maximum. It's like when a 50-year-old drinks. That's the kind of hangover you get, is one that lasts fucking 5 weeks, because that's what we're at right now, and I don't see it changing.
Minus 24-point differential for the Los Angeles Rams. The only team in the NFC with a worse point differential, the Washington Commanders at minus 34. They have a lower point differential, a worse point differential than the Seahawks, than the Saints, than the Lions, than the Bears. Not great, Bob. Not great. And their offense is ranked 21st in the NFL. Dak Prescott is the one I want to highlight. Obviously, no guarantee he plays this week, and he's playing a Los Angeles defense. He's going to be on the road at SoFi. Not an easy matchup to return to, as much as we just dissed the offense. The defense, despite losing that game, giving up some huge plays, they're not the problem. In schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing offenses, they're still in the top 12 overall this season. Again, it's not a vaunted defense like we thought, but Dak, again, with rushing upside and assuming he's the usual Dak Prescott, I think he's got some solid upside.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback, in my opinion. If someone dropped him in your league, you should probably be picking him up. I had to hold him in a couple of leagues. I had him because I was pretty high on him in the offseason. He's one of my highest owned quarterbacks on Underdog, so I hope he returns, but I also hope that he's actually healthy. And it's not like a Chris Godwin situation where they just roll him out and he just keeps getting fucking obliterated. Like, I don't understand that with Chris Godwin. Like, he got hurt again, and then they're rolling him out again. Makes no sense. But I hope Dak is okay. I like Dak a lot this week if he does play. The one quarterback I wanted to talk about is Tannehill. Tannehill hasn't really been putting up the best numbers for fantasy, but he has been pretty good for the Titans ever since the first 2 games. Quarterback 8 against the Raiders in week 3, quarterback 20 last week. He hasn't been throwing the ball at that high of a rate. We could kind of expect that, right? 21 times last week. That was a big win for them, obviously, with how good Derrick Henry looked. But going into the bye, week 6, I think they smack up the Commanders. I think Tannehill could have a top probably 8 game.
They should take care of business. The only issue is, what if Derrick Henry runs for about 281 yards? Let's hit up tier 5. We got about 9 minutes remaining on this fine Tuesday. Get those questions in. Happy you're hanging out. Might be raining, might be cold, might be a little wet, might be feeling like football weather, feeling like fall, but we're happy you're here. Thanks for hanging out at the Stochastic Fantasy Football channel. As we get the graphics in there, Ken Howie asked a little bit earlier, Goff or Rodgers to start this weekend? Goff going against the New England Patriots, who kind of stymied Rodgers more than we expected. And then Rodgers in the Lunder situation, but playing a Giants defense who he needs to trounce.
Yeah, I'm going Goff personally. I like Goff better. Goff seems more reliable at this point. So I'm going to go Goff. I don't think that's even a crazy take, in my opinion. It would have sounded crazy if I said it in August.
Do you hear what you're saying, Nick? Like,
yeah, that Goff is more reliable than Rodgers.
It's October 4th. Do you know where these players were in ADP a month ago?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I said if I said this in August, it would sound fucking ridiculous, right? Like, Rodgers was what, quarterback like 14, and then Goff is quarterback like 29,
21, yeah.
28.
Oh,
Yeah,
28. Yeah, he was later than that. You're right.
yeah, it was like
Um,
28.
so we got Cooper Rush in the middle here. Obviously, that's sort of a hedge because we had Dak Prescott at 22. Obviously, one will be slightly higher, one will be completely off the rankings by the time we hit Sunday.
Yeah,
Justin Fields continues to be horrible at
busted.
passing, but he has a decent matchup, I suppose, against the Minnesota Vikings. Matt Ryan has a tough matchup. No Jonathan Taylor. Uh, I believe Denver giving up the fifth least amount of passing yards per game so far this season. What do you think of Zach Wilson? Did you see enough that you might want to start him, pick him up in your fantasy leagues, maybe a 2 QB league?
In a two QB league, of course, I'd pick up anyone playing quarterback. But like, I'm gonna be honest with you, the gritty was fire. That was a great. I don't like the Jets, obviously, as a Dolphins fan, but that gritty was fire when he hit the gritty in the end zone. The MILF Hunter himself, the MILF special. I touted it on Twitter when they did the Philly special and they threw it to him. But let's be honest here. Did you really think Zach Wilson looked good in that game? Aside from the end of the game where he looked amazing, I didn't think he had that great of a performance. And maybe I should give him all the credit in the world, right? He had a great fourth quarter, but I don't know. I don't necessarily trust him. The Dolphins defense did not look good at all against Cincy, but I think that was one of those your quarterback just got laid out. You're
How do you
thinking
play
about
football
that.
after that,
Yeah.
man?
And then your team gets plowed in like the second half. Like if Tua's in the game the whole time. Now again, this obviously there's no way to know. I think the defense would have played better. That's what happened a lot last year when Jacoby Brissett would get in the game. The Dolphins defense would just be dead. Like they would be useless. And then when Tua was in the game, you'd see they'd actually kind of try a little bit more. So I think Zach Wilson struggles against the Dolphins defense, but I do understand why you'd have him ranked in the top 24 because once you get to like QB 24, things start to get really dicey. And Zach Wilson does have rushing upside. He's got a lot of weapons, but he only likes to use Corey Davis. So that makes sense, right? You have Garrett Wilson. You have, what's his name? Elijah Moore. And then
Elijah Moore, yeah. And I
yeah.
will say Garrett Wilson had a few interesting plays called back by penalty. So the final stat line doesn't look as good. But I think that's the biggest takeaway is Zach Wilson was getting Corey Davis more involved, particularly during the second half when they were trying to make sure they didn't blow the game against a subpar Steelers team. We're on the go. Look at this move, playing 49ers D versus the Rams.
I did that too.
I bet your league mates were sitting there going, "What is this guy about to do?" And then boom, there's the payoff, 20 points. That's the stochastic fantasy football way. Let's ask some final questions here in our final 5 minutes. Julian asks, rest of season, Josh Jacobs or AJ Dillon? We'll definitely get to the running back show for week 5 tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, same time, same place. What do you think of this one for the rest of the season, Nick?
All right. See, I think you have to go with Jacobs at this point. I think the team finally realized something that I wanted the whole offseason because I drafted a lot of them in underdog. Don't have them in a single redraft league. I wanted Josh Jacobs to be the guy. My biggest worry and why I didn't have him ranked so high was because they have other guys, and we know that McDaniel wants to use a committee. But I think we saw yesterday, and I hope that McDaniel saw the exact same thing, or McDaniels, whatever the fuck his last name is, that they need to give the ball to Jacobs. Jacobs is the most talented running back on the team. I understand they have other guys they're going to sprinkle in, but Jacobs is the guy. I also ate the Jacobs chalk yesterday. I've been playing Jacobs since week fucking 1. Every week I roll him out there. He hasn't done anything, but this week was the week, and I was very excited about that. I think Josh Jacobs going forward has top 12 potential. He always had top 12 potential. The problem was that committee was just a black cloud just blocking him.
It was, and now that's not a concern anymore. In week 4, his 89% snap share was second highest among all running backs to only
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley. And his 52% total opportunity share, that's his percentage of team total opportunities, that's targets and rushes, third to Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. That's a bell cow running back. AJ Dillon does not have that role. Volume is king in fantasy football. Got to go with Josh Jacobs. Wow. Again, it's been a weird month. Jason asks, Adam Thielen or Gabe Davis this week? Thielen for me going against the Chicago Bears team. Wow. No. I'm going Gabe Davis. They're going to put up points in Buffalo.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, Gabe Davis has shit the bed a couple times in a row, but he has been hurt. So, like, how much do you want to wait that? Like, I played Gabe Davis this week. I told people to play him with confidence. Obviously, it was like a pie slap to the face in those old movies, but I don't necessarily think that Gabe Davis is bad or something. I just think he's banged up. He's playing banged up. He's out there. There's so many injuries to the Buffalo Bills, like, receiving
That
core,
part's true.
like, that you just kinda have to be like, "Whatever," like, put the past behind you, right? You're just looking towards this week. You can look what happened in the past, but at the end of the day, when there's an injury like that, I don't think it matters too much, like, just looking at the past. So I think you wanna look forward and think about how Gabe Davis should be much better.
And Thielen is just on a team that is going to, they're both wide receiver twos. They both have similar range of outcomes from a volume perspective. The
Yeah.
Bills score more touchdowns on a per week basis. Final question. This one's close, but pretty easy for me. It's the Jaguars defense instead of the Vikings, KJ. The Jaguars defense, again, in my favorite metric, schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, fourth best in the NFL. A little turnover happy. That can regress. But both have great matchups. Both are touchdown favorites. I'm going with the Jags just slightly over the Vikings as a waiver ad.
Yeah, I'd go with the Jags as well. The Jags defense to me looks amazing. Like, I'm shocked that they look this good. This whole team, it's a true turnaround going from that stooge Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson. Did you see real quick? I know we're kind of on a time crunch here. We got to get out of here. But did you see Jason Kelsey and Doug Peterson doing a jersey swap where Kelsey got Doug Peterson's jacket that he was wearing? Funny as fuck.
That is awesome. And good to see that he's still beloved there in Philly. I know we got a lot of Philly folk over at the Stochastic crew who, regardless of how things ended over there, they will never forget that 2017 season and just seeing the Jaguars be a competent NFL team. Honestly, nice from a league fandom standpoint. Nice way to close things out, especially because that defense looks good. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys. Several dozen of you hanging out. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't. The like button, of course, helps us out, helps YouTube out, helps figure out how we can help you guys. And leave a comment below if we didn't get to your stuff in chat. We do check things out in the comments and try to get to everything as well. Make sure you follow this guy, Nick Lepri, at Notorious FNTSY. Thanks so much for hanging out, man. Any final words for the people?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As I always say in these videos, Dolphins by 50 against the Jets. Even Teddy Two Gloves, take them down. But thank you guys for watching. It really means a lot. Make sure you guys check out all the videos we have on here. Make sure you check out the videos on Notorious Fantasy by Stochastic. I'm going to have 2 videos today. This is video number 1. So actually, this is not a video. This is a live stream. So 2 more videos after that on that channel talking about running backs and receivers. Back every single day talking about stuff. And make sure you come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. These streams are genuinely really fun, at least for me. I don't know. Matt probably hates talking to me for 45 minutes every day. But yeah, I have a fun time. Yeah, he hates it. It's
It's a
dreadful,
blast,
yeah.
man. I always appreciate it. We got so much going on over at Stochastic DFS, here at Stochastic Fantasy Football, Notorious Fantasy by Stochastic, where you hang out all the time. And of course, the Odd Shopper channel. If you're dipping this into the sports betting waters, no better place to be. We got it all over at Stochastic. For Nick Lepri at Notorious Fantasy, my name's Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. And for the Stochastic Fantasy Football, we'll see you guys later.